Well, I just want to begin by welcoming everyone to the American Academy of Couple and Family Psychology's YouTube channel. And today we really have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Hamid Mirsalimi, who is the president-elect of the Academy. So welcome, Hamid. It's good.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I guess I would just like to start with what are you involved in currently, professionally?
Professionally, there are a few things that I'm doing. I am an adjunct professor at Emory University School of Medicine. That's one thing that I'm doing. Another thing is I have a full-time private practice, and in my private practice, I'm seeing individuals, couples, and families. And I would say about half of my practice is actually working with couples and families. And about half of those are couples and families, at least one of whom is an immigrant. So I work a lot with immigrants in my practice.
Yeah.
And then I've been involved with ABEP since about 2005 in one capacity or another.
What kinds of things are you involved with ABEP?
With ABEP, I got my clinical. I have my clinical ABEP, and I also have my ABEP certification in couple and family psychology. So in 2005, I got my ABEP in clinical. And soon after that, I started doing exams, either as an examiner or as the chair of a number of exams, ABEP exams. And then by about 2010, I became the Southeast Region board member and exam coordinator for the American Academy of Clinical Psychology, the clinical division. Then I served for several years in that capacity and did exam coordinations and was involved with that board. And then in 2018, I got my ABEP in couple and family psychology. And soon after that, I became the member at large of the American Academy of Couple and Family Psychology. And now I'm going to start in a few months in September. I'm going to be I'm currently president-elect. So I'm going to.
Well, don't take this the wrong way, please, honey, but you've been around.
I've been around for a while. Yes, I have.
And I want, before we go further, I just want to point out, you had mentioned that approximately, half of the couples that you see are immigrants. And you had a wonderful article in 2010, as I recall, in Psychotherapy Theory, Research, Practice, and Training about your experiences. As so if you could share with us, what have you learned that helps you in terms of dealing with a couple, or one of whom or both of them are immigrants?
One of the variables that I have found to be most fascinating to me in working with immigrants is to think about the kind of background, of course, the kind of background that they're coming from, but among the many variables to consider, one that I find most interesting is whether they have come from an individualistic background or a collectivistic background. I find that variable, among others, of course, to be incredibly informative. I think our worldviews, whether we come from an individualistic background or a collectivistic background, it's so much shaped by that. That I find that so many decisions that couples need to make are informed or influenced by that background. I'll give you one example. Many couples who are struggling, when they're thinking about divorce, they think about whether they should remain in the marriage for the sake of the children,
Yes.
or whether they should separate and divorce because they feel that, one, maybe they don't want to sacrifice themselves and believe that that's important. And two, maybe they want to show their children that they should not sacrifice so much. I have found that questions such as that, struggles such as that, decisions that need to be made in that regard are tremendously impacted by this variable of individualism versus collectivism. And kind of, I'm not saying people are either this way or that way, but the degree to which they lean on one side or the other. And I don't have any judgment about that aspect of it. I just find that that variable is tremendously descriptive and help us in treatment planning and understand and formulation of what's going on.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, because I think it's such a wonderful perspective to keep in mind for anyone who's dealing with couples or families or individuals, for that matter, that are immigrants. And so that distinction between the collective and the individual societies is such an important factor. So
yeah, one addition to that, I find it so interesting working with couples whose background are actually two different. One comes from an individualistic background and the other one from a collectivistic background, and the struggles and the clashes and ideologies, and it's just fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I could share my own story, because this came up when I was going for my ABIP and presenting a case of a Brazilian woman who was married to an Egyptian man. She was Catholic, he was Muslim, and not that religion was, she converted, it wasn't religion, but just the different societies and how they clashed in that way was fascinating. So yeah, I could really endorse what you're saying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But you also have a systemic point of view, and I'm just curious as to why systems theory?
Yeah, like so many of us who took psychology in undergrad, I was absolutely fascinated with theories of personality and psychopathology. But I always felt that the idea that individual personality is basically, at that time, what was used to formulate a problem I just felt like a lot was missing in thinking about it that way. I remember when I took social psychology as an undergrad, for the first time, this idea of kind of the context, the power of the situation became really fascinating to me, but I never knew how to apply that clinically. When I went to graduate school, I had some great professors who really taught me, Dr. Martha Foster and Dr. Greg Yerkovic. They really kind of got my fascination with clinical systems theory ignited. They were very influential in my life. And then I got very fascinated with Salvador Minuchin's ideas and ideas of Murray Bowen. They were just fascinating to me. And then I bumped into the ideas, or they taught me the ideas of Yuri Bronfenbrenner and ecological systems theory. And when I learned about that, and this idea that to formulate the struggles of Bronfenbrenner was mostly talking about children, but the struggles of a human being based on multiple frameworks, their families, their communities, their places of worship, and kind of the interactions among those and between those. I just found it fascinating. But Bronfenbrenner went way beyond that and talked about the influence of culture and the historic context.
Yes.
And I thought, this is such a comprehensive way of looking at human behavior and human struggles, not just based on an individual's struggle, but the struggles of a couple or a family, and the potential for growth that such an understanding presents to us. So
Yes.
that's how
I mean, I think I certainly share that with you. And I think that an ABIP and couple and family psychology, I mean, is one of the systemic ways of thinking, other than some others, like you mentioned, clinical perhaps, which is more individual in its approach, certainly. So you had an ABIP in clinical. Why an ABIP in CFP?
Well, the way that I thought about it to begin with, and I still think about it, is that I think clinical psychology is kind of the catch-all for our profession. It's the umbrella approach. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I am really a systems-oriented thinker. That's the way I think. That's the way I approach my work. I've failed to mention that later on, I really got exposed to theories and practices, recommendations of John Gottman and Susan Johnson and Harville Hendricks, and a number of researchers and clinicians who have written and done research in the area. And that's the way I think, that's the way I approach. And I thought, I think for the sake of the people that I work with, it is important for them to know that I'm specialized in this area. And not just in general clinical psychology, but in couple and family psychology, which is why I decided to get my ABAP in couple and family also.
So if someone was thinking about obtaining an ABIP in couple and family psychology, what would you say is the value in that? What do you see?
I think, sure. I'm sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, I see that, again, for the general public, the idea that we have a particular specialty. And not only that, but we have board certification in that is very important. I think that if we are going to go and get surgery, for example, I think most of us would really value, in fact, maybe require our surgeon to be board certified.
Yes.
So why not about our work? Why not about our important work? I think that is one. Another reason is that, so that's why I really believe in board certification. Another reason is that when we take the EPPP and get licensed, that is basically the minimum standard for us to do private practice or practice privately. Board certification is the highest standard in our field, and I really think that we should strive towards that. The other thing, and this might be really a lofty goal or wish, is that I really think systems thinking is incredibly important in not only, or that way of thinking is incredibly important in so many aspects of our lives, not just in working with individuals, couples, and families, but in thinking about much bigger systems, much bigger perspectives, such as peace. You know, we have been, there has been so much ethnic and political and racial strife in our country and in the world.
Yes.
And I really think that systems thinking that allows us to think about all perspectives, to think about multiple layers, to think about dynamics of systems, pushes and pulls and feedback loops, and all kinds of ways that issues in individuals, families, couples, regions, and the world are interacting with each other and impacting each other is incredibly important.
Yes.
So that is why, as I said, I think it might be a lofty perspective or goal, but I think CFP and the emphasis in systems thinking is incredibly important.
Yes. Well, I just want to end by thanking you so much for joining us today. This has been fascinating, and I want to wish you good luck as the incoming president of the Academy.
Thank you, Alan.
That's
I
wonderful.
really appreciate it.
So thank you again.
And thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.